We are in week 18 of this series. That's pretty huge for a church. 18 weeks in a 30-week series. This is a commitment. And who here is enjoying the story? Everybody? Yeah. It's the Bible, so if you don't say that, then you got to question your heart. That's great. Awesome. If you're like, no, I don't like the Bible, then we have to have a talk. That's great. Awesome. So, yeah, as you saw on the screen, I'm Luke, kind of on everywhere this morning. It's great. Happy to be here. Let's dive right into it. This week, you'll have read chapter 18 of the story, which covers the exile of the people of Judah. So these are the people, after the kingdoms have fallen, have now been taken to Babylon, and from moving forward, they will be known as Israel. So, the actual physical place of Israel is now dust and ash, but the people that have gone to Babylon are Israel again. So just keep that in mind. We are introduced to the prophets Daniel and Ezekiel. They both prophesied from Babylon while in exile. So just to give you reference, our previous prophets were in the kingdom of Israel. These guys are now in Babylon. The exile is a significant part of the return to Eden's story. So as we have been focusing on this big question, how does what I'm reading relate to the greater storyline of God's plan to heal our sins and bring us back to Eden? This exile part plays a significant role in that. The promised land was meant to be a new Eden, but instead it was ravaged, dying, and toxic. God literally tells the people through the prophet Jeremiah that he needs to give the land a season of rest from them and their sins so that it can replenish itself. The removal of the people from the promised land by force is a nuclear option for God. It's a violent reset, a hard stop. There are times in our lives when we find things important to us being stripped away or being lost. It's in these moments that hopefully we can turn to God in a way we have never done before. When God took the people out of Palestine, he was stripping away all that distracted them, bound them, and blinded them. It was his hope that through this they could cling to him once again. The time in captivity produced a remnant, a small group of people out of a larger group who did cling to God. Many who went into exile lost faith and were assimilated by the culture of Babylon, but a few established a faith more pure than had existed in Palestine, in the previous kingdoms. Daniel and his friends are an example of this. What is significant in the period that the people came to understand that their identity was tied up in their faith. In the example of Daniel, we see how they came to understand that their faith defined way more than their worship practices. Faith affected their choices they made daily on things such as food and education, even when it went against popular culture. That stings a bit in our modern world, doesn't it? They were realizing that God wanted a people whose lives, through and through, were devoted to him. This was a big change for people who had for years worshiped Jehovah one day and then worshiped other gods the other days. This was a refining fire of tribulation, forging a new people with the heart of God. Let's go to Pastor Landry.
All right, thanks, Luke. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone online, too. Good to be here. Can I ask you a question? If you're watching online, you can answer too. Who enjoys change? Who just functions well in it? Do we have like change people, like functions they just enjoy? They almost like, anyone like love that stuff? Who like some of you like, yeah, it's fine. Change is okay. Anyone like it is their worst anxiety, like change comes and you're tapping out right away. Anyone? Okay. So I'm talking like even in your routine of your day, like traffic throws you off so much. Like you just can't even handle even that light that you usually go that's green through. It's all of a sudden red on a Thursday morning, and that throws you off. You know what? That's okay. That's okay. I'm going to talk about change today. I'm going to talk about trusting God through change. And for some of you, it's going to hopefully help you. Thinking of a spiritual line to say, but let's just call it, hopefully it's going to help. I'm hoping today, praying today, that as we think about times of change, that we learn to deepen our trust in God in them. There's a line I'm going to say And I'm not famous for writing it because I felt like, and I might say it a few times so it helps us. We open the door for God to move as we deepen our trust in Him. We open the door for God to move as we deepen our trust in Him. Some of you could write that down and put it on your mirror. A very famous verse about trust in the Bible is Proverbs 3:5. And it's a verse a lot of us know. So it says, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to Him and He will make your path straight. It's such a great verse. Rolls off the tongue even. Some of you have it. Who has that memorized? Like when I say it, you were finishing it. And then that verse is also very challenging, almost annoyingly challenging. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. And any of us, and a lot of us that are like to function without change and to plan our lives, this verse is hard when change occurs because then our trust gets rattled, right? That's what change can do sometimes. When our plans change, the trust in God that we easily can talk about can sometimes, I'm not saying all, because I'm not saying this is you. Don't get me wrong. I'm like, Landry, I know how to trust in God. Relax. But sometimes it can derail our trust. So what does this mean for us? In this trust, in this context, in Proverbs, this word trust that the writer says, it comes from the Hebrew word batah. And this expresses the sense of well-being and security which results in having something or someone in whom to place confidence. So it's a sense of well-being and security which results in having something or someone to place confidence. If you go down, I was looking at the definition, and here's some interesting key words that come as you look at the definition of trust. It says to be bold, to trust, to be secure, to be safe, and careless comes up as well. Careless as we trust. Interesting terms. So as we focus on chapter 18 of the story, and a lot of the chapter 18 of the story was focused on Daniel and his friends and the people around him. They found themselves in a drastic change. Like these are like, come on, if you ever watch VeggieTales or you knew VeggieTales, these are like stories that VeggieTales made millions off of, is in Daniel. I don't know if they made millions, but I'm sure, I hope they did. I hope someone did. Good people did well financially through them. But here's the thing. These stories are wild when you think of what happened. So the people were ripped from their home, taken from everything they knew, landed in, and they were taken hostage. They were in exile. Exile is a tame way of saying it. This type of change is really hard for us and a lot of us in how we grew up here in this culture to relate to that type of change. It happens around the world, people being taken from their home and taken from their place of security and forced to be in a new place. That, I can't even begin to understand how hard that would be on the trust that we would say we have in God. But change can rattle it. But when we look at the lives of Daniel and their friends, something grounded them in their trust in the God that they knew, they were taught their whole life, carried them through. So when we read these stories, these iconic stories, it's a wow factor of how great their trust was. There's many things we can take away. But can we take away this morning how we can be encouraged to trust God through major change? To learn how to trust Him through things that we didn't plan. See, trusting God is easily talked about. It's even easily prayed. Can I say that? It's easy to say in worship and prayer, I trust you, Lord. Many of us, myself included, I'm very good at that prayer. But then when things get jolted in our life, that prayer becomes real, and then we can so quickly take things back in our own hands. We're going to get down into the nitty-gritty this morning, and we're going to challenge ourselves. I'm just going to speak what I'm seeing here. We are going to challenge ourselves. You need to challenge yourself. We need to let God come in, the Holy Spirit come in and deepen our sense of trust in Him. Because here's the thing, storms happen. That shouldn't be they happen. Storms come. But these men, Daniel and his friends, their faith didn't start in exile. Their faith was already real. Their trust was already real. And when the change happened, the trust just continued. It strengthened and it got real. So this is why it's not about, this message isn't for those that are in troubling times or in hard times. This message isn't for those who you're about to enter a season. It's not a doom and gloom. We're about to go through a hard time. This is to deepen all of our levels of trust, knowing that as we walk through life, as we carry through life, we're going to hit times that are harder and when we need to trust, and we've already built up the trust. It's already strong. Let's look at some pieces from the book of Daniel. And in this chapter 18, Daniel 1:8. But Daniel was determined not to defile himself by eating the food and the wine given to them by the king. So as we walk in faith, we need to be able to trust God with the outcome. So right off the bat, Daniel and his friends made a choice. They knew what was right on their heart, but they made a choice. But we talked about this last week, but they trusted God with the outcomes of that choice. And some of us get really nervous when we have to make the choice to begin with because we don't trust God with how it's going to play out. So when we avoid the choice, we avoid making that call. Trust is built up. Trust has to start. Who has kids that you're teaching or just taught in the past how to drive your car? I don't. But I've taught a lot of students how to drive. And the trust in that moment, parents, come on, like how do you do? Like you've seen every flaw of your child their whole life. And all of a sudden, you're saying, just take the wheel. Like I blew through a stop sign the first time I was driving. And my dad just said, that was a stop sign. But I literally just hit the wrong pedal. Never driven a car. I'm a great driver, I feel now. But like that trust in that moment, it's not just given in that second. Sure, take the car. Like you know your son or daughter. You've lived with them. And maybe you choose not to let them drive your car. And then you trust the driving instructors to deal with that scenario. So as we think about your life, do we trust God with the outcomes in the moments as we choose to make that step of trust? Because that's what we have to do sometimes. We live by faith, not by sight. In 2 Corinthians 5:7, it talks about. But as Daniel and their friends stood their ground, and what they knew in their heart was true, and the faith they had, they got immense favor because they did that. When they opened the door for God to come and move through their trust, He absolutely did. He absolutely did come and move. So when you look at your life, have you and will you continue to open the door for God to come and move through your trust? The next thing Daniel did is he trusted in God's voice. Do you trust His voice to the point that you will act on it? Because this is another easier said than done, of course. Who trusts in God's voice? Yeah, we should. But then, have you ever heard God speak and it's a call to action? How hard is it to act on that call? Who's ever been an opportunity before the ruler of a nation to go speak on behalf and interpret a dream before? And call and say, I need the king's ear. Anyone been in a situation like that? No. But what we can learn from it is what the immense trust he had. See, in Daniel 2:17-19, and this is in the story, is in page 250 to 253, King Nebuchadnezzar, after they've gained favor through their trust, after God's opened a door through them trusting in the outcomes as they stood ground for what they believed in, they said, I will not eat, I will not drink this. They showed up better than all the other people in this program, for lack of better words, in this education. And they, because of how they chose to honor what their commitment and their faith, they showed up better than these other men, and they were chosen to be in service and were put ahead of many others. And then he finds himself in this position because in verse 17, they hear about that the king has had a dream and no one's able to interpret it. No one. And it's a life and death situation. Don't want to overlook that one as well. Because no one was able to interpret it, King Nebuchadnezzar was going to have all the people that could have everyone killed that were his advisors. So Daniel came back to his friends. He returned to his house and explained the matter to his friends, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. He urged them to plead for mercy from the God of heaven concerning this mystery, so that he and his friends might not be executed with the rest of the wise men of Babylon. During that night, the mystery was revealed to Daniel in a vision. Then Daniel praised the God of heaven. Then Daniel made this step. Daniel replied, as he got ear to the king, no wise man, enchanter, magician, or diviner can explain to the king the mystery he has asked about, but there is a God in heaven who reveals mysteries. He has shown King Nebuchadnezzar what will happen in days to come. Your dream and the visions that pass through your mind as you were laying in bed are these. And he goes to explain to the king what his dream was about. But God spoke to Daniel what the dream was about. And then Daniel, off the confidence and trust that he had heard God's voice, went and said, I will tell the king. This makes me nervous even thinking about it. Church, we have to trust God's voice. And we have to be so confident in it, so secure in his voice, that we will change and risk everything for it. Who has ever doubted that it was really God speaking to them? Come on. Doubt is real. When we trust God and his voice, and then we act on it, we see doors just fling open for God to come and move. Many of us never get to that place. We hear God, we maybe hear his whisper, we maybe hear him through his word, but then we never choose to act. This has to change. Because there is so many voices in our lives. There are so many sources that are speaking to us. So many inputs, right? There are so many things coming our way. And when we say we want to hear God, we want to hear his direction, we want to hear him move, and when he is speaking, but we don't trust the outcome and trust to act on his voice, we miss out, and the people around us miss out on how he wants to move. There is people here in this room. I'm preaching the whole sermon for this one scenario because I felt so strongly that there's people here that you have heard God's voice about your life and about your scenario and about what's coming next, and that you've sat on it. And you have to move on it. I got to say it again because some of you have sat on God's word for too long, and the outcome of you acting on it will change many, many things. This young man's trust got him ear to the king of a nation, and he interpreted a dream that changed the direction. God's voice changes everything in our lives, and then when we don't act on it, we are saying we're inhibiting the creator of the universe to move and to come and act. But he's already stepped in. He's already stepped into our lives and spoken. He's already broken down the walls of communication. He's stepped through all of our confusion and all of our chaos in our minds. And we are chaotic people in our minds. And if you have heard God in this day and age through the chaos, through social media, through all the news outlets, through everything, through all the people giving you bad advice, and you do not trust God to act, church, we need to wake up. Because things won't change. So some of you have a calling on your life that you've never chose to step into and say, God has called me. Some of you have a career change that you've never spoken out, that you know God spoke over you and you never chose to act. Some of you relationship, there's many, many things. I don't have to say it to make it true in your heart because you already know it. You have to trust God and His voice enough to act on it. This story would not even be a story we've heard about if Daniel heard. Can you imagine hearing the interpreted dream that everyone's about to be killed if they can't answer and saying, I know it. I know God spoke to me. And there is not a shadow of doubt in your mind. Wow. It's easy to talk about trusting God's voice, but it changes everything. It opens every door for Him to move when we answer it and we respond to it. You see, oh, yeah, it's good. I just think some of you need to know, and you know this already, but His word does not return void. So the step that you have, whoever, this may be you online too, whoever this is, because some of you do have a word, and maybe it's been a couple weeks, maybe it's been a couple months, but God's word does not return void. So when He's spoken to you, He means business. And so when He has something for you, He's going to see it to pass. I don't know the timeline, so don't say, well, Landry, tomorrow? I don't know. But when He speaks, He moves. He doesn't send and then leave alone. So for you, for this next step, whatever it might be for you, that you know, and you don't have to tell me, you don't have to tell Him, but for you, you just need to know that you need to act and that God has a bunch more things to tell you. He has many more ways to use you after that step. So for you, if this step, you need to make that call and decide now, move past your fears, move past your anxieties. This is just tips on responding to God's voice here. This isn't written down. And you act on it. And I know as soon as you act, God is going to come. For weeks, I sat on, I've told you this before, when I felt to go and live and do missions with YWAM, I was so mad that God had spoken to me because I did not want to do it. I did not want to move. You're like, oh, it's Australia, that would have been great. I did not want to leave my cushy Kerrisdale lifestyle, snowboarding, and I lived in my parents' home. I did not want to leave that. And so when I felt in my heart and I couldn't move past it, I knew God had spoken and I fought it, and I had a headache for 2 weeks straight because I fought it so hard. Everything in me, but I knew God spoke. I knew. And I didn't even tell anyone. I was so nervous to tell my mom and dad. I was most nervous to tell my close friends because I couldn't imagine what would happen if I told them. They said, are you crazy? But when we speak out what God has said, we're declaring it for ourselves. And then we're owning it. When Daniel went to that advice, said, take me before the king, he owned it. He said, I know I've heard God. I called my best friend at the time. I was so nervous. I said, I feel God's supposed to, and I'm like shaking. But I knew. He said, wow, I love it. I sat down with my mom and dad. I'm crying because I'm so afraid. But what God did in those next few years and in my life, I would never take for granted. I met my wife in that time. I saw God move in mighty, mighty ways, and I would have just missed it all because I didn't have the courage to act and trust him after I heard his voice. Are you hearing me? Are ones of you that have this on your heart, have I pushed you enough? I hope God is stirring you and this word and whatever he's saying enough to the point of you saying, okay, I got it. Okay. But you need to act. The next thing I see these men doing, these friends, is they trusted God and operated in security and safety, that God was their protector. They operated in such high levels of trust, knowing, because remember this definition of trust, it talks about security and safety. They knew that God was their protector. Chapter 3 in Daniel, the king Nebuchadnezzar makes a statue of himself. This is a very iconic, great story. And everyone has to bow down to it when music is played, we know. But these three men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they didn't. In chapter 3, 16 and 17, it says this, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego replied to him, said, King Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves before you in this matter. If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God we serve is able to deliver us from it, and he will deliver us from your majesty's hand. It's such crazy trust. I can't help but think of the VeggieTales story, because it was a big chocolate bunny. And there's a song, I won't get into it. But the story goes on, and these men are thrown into the furnace, a furnace so hot anyone got close, they died. The heat was so immense. They are unscathed, they are taken out. I wonder what they were thinking as they had made the choice to stand. And in their minds, they were trusting God. They even articulated their trust in God. But I wonder what they were thinking. They've already challenged the king. We trust God. We know the outcome. And then they were walked to the fire. What were they thinking then? I'm thinking they're thinking this. All right, God. You know I trust you. I've said I do, but this fire is right here. Like I'm chained up right now. I'm literally about to die. And not a dramatic teenager saying. That's a very common thing. Young people, I'm literally about to die right now. You know, I'm like, okay, I hear you. But that's like before they walk into a test they didn't know about. I'm literally dying right now. Calm down. This is like, God, I am about to die. What element of, like, this is wild. God, I say I trust you, but right now I actually do. 100%, there's nothing left. I need you and you alone. You're the only one right now that can do anything. Who's ever got to a place like that? Everything else has not worked. Nothing else has gone your way. You said you were trusting in God, and you were hoping he was going to act, and then you didn't see him, and you're approaching the furnace. God, let me just remind you, I still do trust in you, but this situation has not changed. This is what I'm talking about. Who's ever been there? You're reminding God of a very obvious thing that's occurring in your life, but saying, God, I need you. This is where the rubber hits the road in our trust. We need to be at this place and built up already. So when we get to this place, when we're staring down what's ahead of us and a situation we did not want or plan, because those happen, right? And we're staring it down, and we've prayed a lot of prayers, but you still need to be able to face it and say, God, I trust you more than anything right now. And I trust what you're going to do. And I need you to do it right now. That type of trust, that type of faith is immense mountain-moving trust and faith. And we can stand there and trust God with the outcome, because the outcome we can't control, right? But we're saying, God, I do trust you. That is where we want to get to. We can stare down the barrel of whatever it is and say, I do not care because I trust in my God and my Savior, and I know that He knows best for me in my life and my family and my work and my circumstances. That's trust. That opens doors for God to come and move in whatever way He's going to move. Wow. See, because change throws us. As life goes on, as things happen, we need to be able to get to this place of trust and get there fast with things we can't control. We had a couple scares this summer with our kids. We had a scare that, what really rattled me and Abby with one of our kids, and she was running on the road, and we didn't know it, in her diaper. She got out, she got out in a second. And we were there, and Raylan's fast for her quick, chunky little legs. But the driveway for her is like Giggle Town, and she knows that, she just thinks it's funny that she's going to run, but we're going to have to try to get her. But this time, the gate bounced back open, and no one knew, and she hit the driveway, and no one was aware. And she went, we live on a trucking route, perfect, right? And she ran to the road, we didn't know, and she was running on the road. And we screamed. It's highly traumatic for us. And someone in that moment was driving, saw a baby on the road, and thank goodness. But they had the sense to pull over and not go, oh, geez, there's a baby. But they pulled over and they grabbed Raylan, and they were looking for this is like 45 seconds timeline. There's nothing. This is why. And they brought her back. It took us hours, weeks to calm down. And for me, this is my response. I'm just being real, because this is what we do with change and things that rattle us. I try to control every single aspect. I'm thinking about new gates. I'm thinking about new protocols. I'm thinking about where me and Abby need to sit in the backyard. Abby, you always need to be here. I need to be here. And I'm trying to just hands-on control, because I need to learn how to control the outcome. Then we're swimming, and I was so rattled. We went to a lake, and I couldn't even handle. I'm like, because I can't control the outcomes of everything. Parents, right? We can't. We just don't. Abby just said, you just need to trust God more with my kids. I'm like, oh, dang, Abby. It's my wife. I'm like, you're right. Because I'm just thinking, yes, get better locks on the gates. We should build up things. That's why I'm like, yeah, I'm hoping she's saying stuff like that to me. You got it. I'm on it. No, it's thanking Jesus that He protected. But then knowing He's my protector. And He will protect way better than I can. So for your situation, for your family, as you say you trust, God is your security. And He is our protector. And trust means we're saying, I trust you that you are better at this than me, that I have practical ways I think I can fix this and change this, but I trust your ways. You're actually better at it. You are actually the healer. You are actually the protector, and you do bring security. This is hard. Especially family matters, am I right? But when we trust God, we open the door for him to move. And that's the place we want to get to. Do I actually trust God with my kids? Was my question of the summer. I feel I'm a pretty good dad, and I feel I'm very aware, but I'm not a perfect dad, and I can't control everything. And I had to learn as my daughter changed into all of a sudden a track star, and when she hits the driveway, straight to the road, we gotta make sure that gate's shut. Common sense. But we need to trust God more. Lastly, we see these men, through their trust, it affected the boldness of their prayer life. We see in the last story I'm going to highlight. Daniel 6, we see this other iconic story. A trap was made for Daniel specifically, because these people knew they wanted to kill him because they knew he prayed to a different God. And so they set up a trap for him. For 30 days, they had everyone only pray to the king. See, these are very extreme change situations here we're reading about. And Daniel didn't listen to that. The punishment, by the way, it's minor, just thrown into a lion's den. Just minor thing. It's a joke. You can laugh. Very harsh punishment. Boldness is in the definition of trust. Daniel, we see a glimpse of him being quite bold here, but bold in a very certain way I want to talk about. In Daniel 6:10, now when Daniel learned that the decree had been published, he went home to his upstairs room where the windows opened towards Jerusalem. 3 times a day he got down on his knees and prayed, giving thanks to his God, just as he had done before. Church, when we trust God, when we hold the line in our prayer life, that's this step of action, and that's huge. So it's not always outward, like physical action, but sometimes trust means operating in the boldness of saying, I know that God knows. I know that he has the outcome. I know that he is a loving, good, protective Father, and I am going to hold the line of that right here in prayer. And I'm going to enter in to my prayer room with boldness, knowing who God is and trusting him fully and operating in that way in prayer. Boldness is in one of the definitions of trust. See, this is almost impossible for the doers in the room and online. Almost impossible. Because when change happens or you need to trust God more, you know, like I know, I needed to fix every gate. I need to fix everything. I need to try to arrange it the way only I feel I can arrange it. You start to dictate the terms and the outcomes. But praying, God, I trust you, but you're still trying to dictate the terms. When we trust God and we need to back it up, sometimes we need to be bold in prayer instead of taking it on, trying to manipulate the change, trying to orchestrate how God needs to move. You instead, hear me, all the doers, hear me. You need to just operate in bold prayer life. Get to God and pray. Get to God and be bold in your prayer life and start moving things through prayer instead of trying to do it all yourself. That's the opposite of trust. You don't trust anything or anyone if you're trying to do it on your own. That does not line up. You can't. It's impossible. We've all tried, right? Have we tried? It does not work. So instead, let's get to work in prayer through change. As we say we trust, we say, all right, God, here's what I trust you with, and I trust you to move. And you just start getting on your knees and holding that line in prayer. This was again life and death for Daniel. And some of you might be in situations that are very, very heavy. We get to go to our Heavenly Father with boldness in prayer and say, God, I trust you. And here's who you are, and here's who I'm going to let you continue to be. Let you. I give you space, God. If you are a fixer, it's a tough prayer, but we got to do it. We have to do it. Let's keep going. In Daniel 6:23, Daniel and it was thrown in the lion's den. In the morning, the king comes down. The king was overjoyed and gave orders to lift Daniel out of the den. And when Daniel was lifted from the den, no wound was found on him because he had trusted in his God. When we are working through very intense situations, God moves as we trust him. So let's let God move. I want to trust God more. No one's there yet. Is anyone there with your trust levels? No way. Because then another situation comes up and you thought you were there and you're like, oh, maybe don't quite trust God enough. Like my example of the summertime, like, oh, I do need to trust God more with my family, new levels. I want to trust God more. I want us as a church and you individuals to walk in deeper levels of trust in God in your life. So we can just see God move more and let him do what only he can do. When I think about Jesus and who he is and what he's done, he operated in 100% trust in the Father. You notice that as you read in the Gospels, 100% trust. Everything he did, he'd even say, everything I do is through and because of the Father. Right up to the point of dying on the cross. Matthew 6:26-39, Jesus says, my Father, if it is possible, may this cup be taken from me, yet not as I will, but as you will. And that Jesus teaches us how to pray in this line in Matthew 6:10, may your kingdom come. May your will be done. Jesus had 100% trust in God in every step, in every situation, even to the point of death. Trusting in who God was. It was always all about him. So are we praying prayers like this? God, it's not about me. It's about you. It's not about the solution I've come up with in my mind. Who has a really great track record of coming up with amazing solutions in your mind? And actually, you're so good at them, you have a lot of great solutions for people around you too. In your mind. And when you hear of other people's problems, you're great at coming up with all the ways that that problem can be fixed. Because you are good in your mind at creating solutions. It is not your job. It is not our job to come up with solutions. We need to say, God, may your will be done. May your kingdom come. And then, step back and let him move. Don't keep giving your solution. Because trust means, and when you pray these prayers, we're saying, God, your way is best. Even in a point of anguish, like Jesus was right before death, still trusting in God with the outcome, knowing his way was best. Not as I will, but as you will. I want to invite you to a deeper trust in God today. We have to. I want to invite some of you at home or here for the first time to trust in God, to trust in Jesus with your life. If you've never trusted in anyone, anything, to say, Jesus, I trust you. I've heard about you. I know who you are. Today might just be the day. I don't know why. But today it might all come together. You say, Jesus, I'm going to trust you today. He is so worth trusting. Amen? He is so worth trusting. He's worth trusting in the little. He's worth trusting when it's life or death. He's worth trusting in every single situation that you or me are going to face. He is worth trusting. And church, we are going to grow and keep acting on that trust. I want us to step into that. I want us to walk out our faith knowing and feeling safe in God, having bold prayers. Some of you that I really believe that some of you, God just reminded you of the word He's spoken to you for now you to go and act on in trust. He is worth the trust in knowing that it's Him that's spoken and acting on it. The band, you guys can come on up. And we're going to do something together. Can we just all agree that we all need to grow in levels of trust? You don't have to, but are we in agreement there that we can grow more in trust? And we're going to sing a song of worship. But during that time, I'm just going to invite a couple staff, a couple of the elders to come, because some of you are carrying and facing big things. And I think it's important for you to do something, is for you to speak out your trust in God about that thing and commit to trusting God in it. So they're going to be up here, a couple people, when we're singing. So you don't feel that everyone's sitting and watching you walk up here. But if you're up here, so Reg and Mike and a couple others, I encourage you, I want you to pray out your trust to God, not them pray it over you. Right? Reg, you hear me? This, I want you to pray it. It's your situation. And then the people that are up here, they're just going to pray over you, cover you after that. Any of you online, I want you to pray and just commit again to trusting God. If you are one of those people that had a word that God had spoken to you and you've been so nervous to tell anyone or speak it out, I want you to come up. I want to pray with you. One of these people wants to pray with you. If you have never committed to trusting in Jesus and trusting in God, we want to pray with you here. This is exciting stuff. Because as we learn to trust God more, we open the door for Him to what? Move. I want God to move in my life. I want God to move in your life. I want God to move in this church. That's why this is exciting. So we can just play a little bit. I'm going to pray over everyone. Let's stand up together. Reg and Mike and a couple of you, or Tony, can you guys come up here? I don't know if we need, just a few. Michael, if you're here, it's great. Here's what we're doing. It's simple. Saying, God, I trust you more. I trust you again. I give you my faith. And deepening levels of trust again. And when you're coming up, you're just praying that out. I want you to pray it first. So God, we come to you right now. Through many, many circumstances we all are facing. Many, many aspects of change are occurring in our lives all the time, and it's not slowing down. And we choose today again to deepen our trust in you. We choose today again to say, God, through all this change, I'm grounding myself in you, and I'm going to trust you with the outcomes. I'm going to trust your voice. I'm going to trust that you know best. I'm going to trust that you're the protector, that I am secure in you, and that you are so worthy of my trust. We say that this morning. We say that this morning. We trust you over sickness. We trust you over finances. Someone's here, you got to let go your grip on money so that God can come and work. You need to trust God over your grip on your money. We trust you, God, with the outcomes over finances. That's a really big move, but God is bigger than money. God, we trust you over employment. We trust you over future spouse, and I trust you over marriages. This is what we're speaking out, church. If you're in this scenario, just speak it out. We trust you, God. So we're just going to worship. We can stand in this place and worship, and I just want to encourage you, if you would like prayer, someone to stand with you in this, please, we love to pray for people here. If you're online, please let someone know online. We would love to pray with you or give us a call this week. That's what we're here for.